Everyone who is a parent um, or imagine himself as a parent, where would you like to raise your children? If you prefer a city, please raise your hand. And now, if you prefer a village, please raise your hand. Okay, opinion seems to be divided. Cities are often perceived as dangerous places for kids. You have to be careful of busy roads and speeding vehicles, but the reality is that for most of us, this dilemma of city or village won't even be relevant, because 92% of us live in the city, and this trend is not going to change. Because we are getting crowded. Even according to the moderate scenario, Israel is almost double its population by 2050, and is going to be the most densely populated country in the West. So we know that most children live, and we live, in the city. But if we know that the city is a dangerous place, how does it go with the fact that so many kids live in the city? We are currently operating in designated places for children, like schoolyards and playgrounds. They serve as kind of islands. Only there, children are allowed to run freely. So how do children get from one island to another? Many children are backseat children, driven by car from one place to another. And as you can see in those pictures, it directly affects the way in which they feel in the city, like a maze of gray roads. In this way, most of the city becomes irrelevant for kids. And here we miss out, because with children, the story is not always the destination. While we, as adults, walk from point A to point B, for children, much of the experience is actually the path. The path is an opportunity to explore and to play. So we see that children experience the city differently than adults, even though their voices, views, and knowledge are hardly heard in city planning. But what if we involve children in city planning? Actually, this idea is not new. Here you can see a quote taken from a booklet published by the Planning Commission of New York City in 1937. And it says that city planning is not for adults only. Children of all ages can understand the necessity for a finer, better, safer, and more convenient city. So this text puts on the table the idea that children can understand city planning. So what can we gain from children's involvement in city planning? Here are 3 good reasons to do so: a pragmatic reason, an educational reason, and an ethical reason. Let's start with the pragmatic aspects. So the first one is that children have needs that only they can express about themselves. If we take different groups of users in the city, like cyclists, old people, or people with disabilities, we can guess what the needs of each group are, but it's best to ask them, right? Why don't we do the same with children? Another pragmatic aspect is that children have new ideas. In this photo, you can see 3 6-year-old boys presenting their dream for a playground with a chocolate fountain. It's true, those ideas are not immediately doable, but they are often creative and innovative. Let's move on to educational aspects. So those processes give children knowledge and tools for understanding the city and the processes that shape it. Another educational aspect relates to the practice of critical thinking alongside civic engagement. Both helps to strengthen democracy. Moving on to ethical aspects, the Convention on the Right of the Child was a turning point in relation to children. It was adopted in 1989, and it has a section which talks only about children's participation in decision making. Here you can see, I'm reading, every child has the right to express their views, feelings, and wishes in all matters affecting them, and to to have their views considered and taken seriously. Talking about ethical aspects, it's important to mention the concept of the right to the city. This concept was proposed by the French philosopher Henri Lefebvre and has inspired numerous scholars from several academic disciplines. This concept refers to a set of rights regarding the city. The first one is collective ownership, which is based on the daily use of the city, on the use in daily life. The second one is real and active participation in decision-making processes. And the third one is inclusive citizenship, whereas inhabitants, no matter if permanent or temporary, are considered citizens and have equal rights. So we have seen that there are many reasons to take children into account. Now the question is how? How can we involve children in urban planning? And here I want to tell you that 5 years ago, I was first initiated a process of involving children in redesigning a playground in the neighborhood where I live in Ramat Gan. I've been dealing with this question ever since. To answer this question, which is the question of my research, I broke it down into 3 sub-questions. The first one is, what do children know about the urban environment? The second is, how can planners communicate with children? And the third one is how this knowledge can be translated into plans. Fortunately, I have access to 2 databases thanks to my two other positions. The first one is that I'm representing the Israeli Association of Architects in a global work program called Architecture and Children, which is a working group of the UIA, the World Association of Architects. The second is that I'm working as a consultant for the Urban 85 program, which is an initiative of the Bernard Valier Foundation to make cities which are better for children, for toddlers, and their caregivers. Thanks to these 2 positions, I have access to projects and organizations in Israel and worldwide, and I can have a view on both. So the test cases I chose, you can see some of them here. Some of them are dealing with designing schoolyards, like young city planners of the Tel Aviv municipality, and like design workshop of JI landscape architecture. Other initiatives are dealing more with the educational aspects and not always reach the actual implementation. In order to answer the 3 questions I mentioned before, I use qualitative methods, which are in-depth interviews with the initiators and with educators who took place in those processes, and then questionnaires for the children who took place as well. The analysis of the information can help, can contribute to the architectural practice in 3 ways. The first one is raising the awareness of Israeli planners regarding the perspective of children on the use of the city. The second is creating an Israeli knowledge base regarding those kind of initiatives that are not always recognized. And the third one is establishing operative policy directions, which can contribute to involving children in urban planning. If we go back to the text from the beginning of the presentation, it has a continuation. City planning is not for adults only. Children of all ages can understand the necessity for a finer, better, safer, and more convenient city. Unless they do understand it, and it becomes as fundamental as the ABC, we can never hope to make our city the healthful, happy home it should be for our children and our children's children. Or, as one of the architects I interviewed said, children are forgotten customers. They deserve a future. if we go back to this question of the village or the city, so for planners mission is to make the cities more suitable for children. But maybe our job is to say goodbye to the fantasy of the village, because we're going to live in the city, and we need to make it suitable for children as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anat, hello, hi.
Hi.
Fascinating, of course. My name is Elad. I'm architecture thing, and well, a current daily, like very, very. It's the only thing on my mind. How do you feel about what kids are doing in the last few weeks? They are out in the streets. They're participating in the urban game. Do you have any thoughts about that?
If I understood you correctly, um, can you maybe repeat?
You don't have to answer if you don't want to.
What?
But you talked about Lefebvre and participation of kids in daily participation in daily routines and life in the city. Well, I see a lot of kids
You see
the
them,
streets
okay.
and raising their heads and their voices in the urban
Okay.
arena. So I'm just thinking about your research with that on my mind, thinking that's a great case study for what you're doing.
Yeah.
Just your thoughts.
Actually, you won't see kids anywhere. In the Urban 95 program, we work, for example, in Arabic city, Tira, and over there you don't have public space, you don't have places for kids, so you cannot take it for granted that the children are over there. And as I said before, many children in many cities are driven by their parents from place to place. So I think at least in the places we can find children as playgrounds and schoolyards, we can talk with them about those places. Maybe in the far future, more parts of we will see kids in more parts of the city, and we can ask them even more. Maybe Tel Aviv is not like the situation in Tel Aviv is not like in every other place.
Hi, my name is Michal from the Weizmann Institute. So I was wondering whether you can give several examples for things that are important for children in the urban environment. For example, what would be the difference between a kindergarten that is designed by a child and a kindergarten that is designed by an adult? Can you highlight these differences?
Yeah, thank you for this question. Actually, I think what is interesting is the dialogue between architects and children. We don't expect children to design by themselves the kindergarten, right? So the interaction there is what's interesting, in my opinion, to see how they communicate. There is a double translation here between the imagination and ideas of the children to words or to drawings, and then we should translate it one time more to the language of planning, which architects can understand. So in those test cases, I want to see exactly those interactions and these processes, how their creative ideas come exactly into plans. But to elaborate a bit more, the question is not what they want, and is more about how do they explain their wishes. For example, I've been talking with a kid in Bet Shemesh, a Haredi kid, and his dream was to have a car to play with, okay, in the public space. And I was asking him, but why do you want specifically a car? What would you like to do with that car? So he told me, I want to climb on the on the roof of the car. I want to watch from the window, and I want to play like a driver. So those are three things, and architect can take those things, and maybe he won't create a car at the end, but he can give this child the opportunity to do those actions he wants. So it was a long answer.
Thank you. It was fascinating and very important subject. I was wondering if you can maybe see any or maybe elaborate on different differences between when you involve, you know, younger children like Urban 95, like 0 to 3, and maybe a bit older children, and what's the difference between their perspectives? That's one question, and the other question is regarding what you showed on our future population here. I was wondering your thoughts about how can we integrate, because I'm seeing like these big planning now, big plans for, you know, for the next few years, and it becomes even faster and faster paced. So I was wondering your thoughts about how to integrate kids planning into that area.
Okay, thank you for those questions. Yes, there are differences between children in different ages. Actually, not all the people I interviewed think that you can actually do participation with toddlers. I made it a few times, and I think with the age of 5, 6, you can actually really talk about the environment, because it's the places where they play, where they live their daily lives. But you have to change the way you talk with them. Maybe more drawings. You have to write more the ideas, because you have to ask them more questions. So the methods are different. And regarding your second question, yes, we are getting crowded, as I said. I think children know the most about the places where they live. I mean, it will be difficult to prepare master plans with kids, okay? Maybe with older kids, with teenagers, we can think how to do it. I know a case from Scandinavia that they took a group of teenagers and gave them an opportunity to participate in an architecture what? תחרות, competition, as a group of architects, and it was a group of children who studied already a few years about the urban environment, and they made a very interesting proposition. So that's it.
Hi, Oriane from Tel Aviv University. I think this is very interesting, and I would love to hear a bit more about children's input into urban spaces that aren't like titled as their own, like playgrounds, and also maybe if there are quite easy changes that we can do to our cities to make them more inviting for children and their parents. So I mean, maybe it's hard to communicate with the children, but their caregivers that are with them many hours have some insight that might be useful.
Thank you, Ariane. So most of the test cases deals with places which are designated for kids, like schoolyards and playgrounds. I can't remember a different kind of participation process. Regarding your second question, yes, sometimes it's very important with toddlers that their caregivers will be like in good position, because like they have that they feel well, because the interaction between the parent or the caregiver and the child is very important for their development. So you have to take care about the needs of the caregiver, like a place to meet and to talk with others, like maybe to have a coffee, bench to sit down, and for the kids, places that they can play, they can explore. You have to look from their perspective, what are their needs. That's it in a nutshell.
Thank you for a very fascinating talk, very important. I would like to ask if all the virtual world is part of all these opportunities and the talk. I still remember, the computer game SimCity.
Mm-hmm.
My daughters used to play it hours. And do you think of involving such tools, especially in the referring to the educational goals, especially for the educational goals you mentioned? Can you have some benefits of this world?
Yeah, thank you very much for this question. Yes, there is a use of these kinds of technologies. In my test cases, I prefer other kinds of interactions because I would like to see what's going on between the planning professionals and the kids. And if we have the technology in the middle, it's a bit more complicated to investigate it. But yes, there are many initiatives with SimCity and other stuff like that.
So we are out of time, but I promised Jonathan and Alon, so I'm going to ask Alon and Jonathan to ask very short questions, and I'm going to ask you to answer shortly.
Thank you. So it's really fascinating, and from my experience, my kids don't take for granted the intended design of stuff, right? So they'll see the cup and they'll see the table, and say, okay, I'll put stuff on the cup and I'll drink from the table. And I wonder to what degree can that feature of kids can be used in designing all those kind of attempts to enable participation by just having them experience and by doing things and not just by talking about it. And so are there projects that use that kind of way of exploring what kids do want and what can they imagine?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. It was very interesting. I was wonder if you can say something general about the preferences of a specific age of kids in, let's say, space and time. Meaning, can you say something general about the preferences of, let's say, 6-year-old kids from different places, meaning coming from, let's say, different socioeconomic backgrounds, or in different times, whether these preferences changes throughout time, or is this design needs to be like local?
Thank you for those questions. I think the cultural issue you mentioned is important. I don't know exactly what are the preferences of each age, but when dealing with public participation, you have to do a different process with different users. I mean, when I'm working with kids in Tira, I won't speak in Hebrew. Okay, I will come with someone who speaks Arabic, or for example, in Bet Shemesh, we made an involvement in the Haredi population, and I couldn't do the public the participation process by myself. There are norms, and like a woman won't sit on the floor with her kids. We had to set a number of children who are allowed to come in, because all the neighborhood came and wanted to take part in the processes. So we shaped those processes differently regarding the number of participants, regarding the place. Is it outside, inside, which kind of population, etc. And the other question, regarding your kids. I think in those processes, that's exactly what is interesting. How do you work with children? You don't only talk to them, okay? They have to do something with their hands, with their imaginations, sometimes the important thing is to make them think about those places, about their playgrounds. What do they want? It's not there because it's just there, okay? We let them think, okay, is it good for us? Is it not good? What do I like? What can we change? And here they also comprehend that they can be active citizens and maybe to influence in the futures about their urban environment.
Thank you very much, Anat.
Thank you.